Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt controlled by someone close to you? And how did it land in your body? Did it make you want to comply? Or did it spark maybe resentment or maybe even a little rebellion? Here's the thing. Our attempts to control others are almost always an unconscious effort to manage our own inner discomfort. Controlling someone else is really just a flawed way to try to control ourselves.
Today, we're unpacking losing strategy number 2, controlling your partner. You might be shocked at how common and how sneaky this one is in all of our relationships. We all slip into this at times, and until we own up to it, this losing strategy quietly chips away at the people that we care about most. That's what's coming up next here on Master Your Marriage.
Welcome back to another episode of Master Your Marriage. If you are tuning in today for the first time, we are so glad that you're here. We release a fresh episode each and every week, so hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. And if today's conversation hits home for you, we would really be grateful if you would take a quick moment to leave us a 5-star review and a comment. It really helps us to spread the word and get our message out to other couples. Today, we are continuing our series that we started last week on losing strategies.
Ooh, doesn't sound like they're productive strategies.
They're not.
Yeah.
We're talking about losing strategies that show up in our relationships when we get into the crunch phase, which Robert's going to explain in just a few minutes. These losing strategies mostly come from the work of therapist Terry Real.
And to get us started today, we're going to revisit the 3 stages of relationships. If you don't remember these, we've spoken about them before, but let's just see if as I go through these, you can recognize yourself in any of these 3 stages.
Yes, you will.
So as I mentioned, all relationships move through 3 predictable stages in the relationship. The first stage is the honeymoon phase. And it's all about being blinded by just love and I love you and you're so sweet. And both partners are showing up always dressed, hair's always combed, teeth are always brushed. It's this polished, curated version of themselves while they are sort of hiding the messy parts. Much like I did when Sharla would come over to visit me when I was a bachelor. You know, you throw all of the dirty clothes, kick it under the bed, and you're throwing all the dirty dishes, clean or not, in the dishwasher so that everything looks perfect. That's this curated version. And Terry Real calls this the love without knowledge phase.
The love without knowledge, because we don't really know each other.
Well, because we're hiding part of ourselves.
And in that early rush, love feels so intense and constant, doesn't it? But honestly, we're not falling for the actual human that is right in front of us. We're falling for the mirror that they hold up, the one that reflects back to us all the validation that we ever wanted, all the admiration that we ever thought we needed. And they give us that sense of self-worth. And beyond that, our hormones are in full swing. The dopamine is just flooding our system and it's shutting down the brain's critical judgment centers so that we can stay in that beautifully blissful bubble of just being in love, but really having no knowledge of who this other person is.
I love the blissful bubble.
The blissful bubble.
Yeah, that was so much fun. But then disillusionment sets in. And the blinders lift or the blindfold comes off and we start seeing each other and even ourselves a little bit more clearly. And this presents a problem. We're faced with this discrepancy between this fantasy partner, this perfect partner that we expected, and the real one we're living with, the one that leaves their socks on the floors.
And actually has the dirty dishes in the sink.
Actually doesn't put the dishes in the dishwasher at all. Terry Real calls this the crunch phase. This phase is usually a make or break for most couples. How you handle the disappointment in this phase determines so much about your long-term happiness together.
Why does this matter so much? Because what do most of us do when we hit the crunch? Well, that is when these losing strategies come out. We reach for strategies that feel effective in the moment, but they actually are strategies that drive us further apart. And Terry Real calls these losing strategies because they're exactly that. They're losing. There's nothing about these strategies that's going to bring you deeper connection or bring you closer together. There's nothing about these strategies that's going to help you to get your needs met or to help you feel just more connected to this person that you love. They're really losing in every way.
And the bottom line is they don't work. They are a lose, lose, lose. You lose, your partner loses, and the relationship loses as well. However, we all use them because they provide sort of this temporary quick relief from this momentary discomfort, yet they really cause deeper pain down the road. Think of it as a permanent solution for a temporary problem.
So, the rest of today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the second losing strategy, which is controlling your partner. And just like with unbridled expression that we did last week, this is another tactic to pressure your partner in order to close that gap between the reality that you want and the one that you're living in. Remember, when you're in that crunch, you have that discrepancy, that gap of this is the person that I want versus this is the person that I'm married to or with. And so we use these as a way to close that gap. And this is something that couples can do in a way that isn't always obvious.
Right.
It can
Sometimes
be,
it's subtle.
it can be really subtle. Sometimes it's even very sneaky.
All right, let's zoom out a little bit here. Why is it that we try to control our partner when logically we know, or we should know logically, that it's not going to work? Well, our brains are wired for safety, and we're wired for safety through predictability.
Yeah.
So certainty feels safe, whereas uncertainty sort of sets off alarm bells. I like to say that stress is caused when you feel like you're out of control in the situation.
Mhm.
And since relationships involve probably the most unpredictable element of all, which is another human being, we fight hard to gain some sense of control and some sense of predictability. So we're going to then employ some strategy in order to gain more safety in our own minds.
Right. So control is in some way a distorted way of trying to find safety.
Yeah, it's an attempt at safety.
And you're right. Other people are wildly unpredictable. So we instinctively are trying to manage them just like we would any other part of our environment that we're trying to control or to manage. But managing another person is where this goes all wrong.
Yeah.
Plus, our brains also work on the law of efficiency. They love efficiency, and our brains automate behaviors, automate processes all the time in order to save energy, because the brain burns about 20% of our daily calories.
Yeah.
It burns a huge amount of calories. So predictability gives this sense of safety, and it also allows our mind to kind of coast on autopilot just a little bit and use less energy. So naturally, when life gets a little crazy, a little chaotic, the brain starts to push back, thinking like, hey, I need to restore order here, even if that means I need to control my partner.
It's an interesting part, this supercomputer we have for our brain.
Mm-hmm.
It really will take over and do some crazy things if we let it run on autopilot.
Yeah.
So at the root of control, it's often about, as I mentioned earlier, safety and soothing our own insecurities. There's lots of insecurity and anxiety when couples are in this crunch phase, as Terry Real called it. It can be pretty uncomfortable when your partner doesn't see things the way that you see them. And when we can't handle that discomfort, we try to reshape the other person in a way that we want them to be, really in a way to make ourselves feel better, in a way to make ourselves feel safe.
Exactly. Now, if you're listening right now to all this and you're thinking, yeah, that's not
crap.
me. I don't try to control anybody. Just pause. Give us a few more minutes, because control hides in plain sight.
It's sneaky.
And we all do versions of it. Sometimes we do it more direct, more overtly, and sometimes we do it, like Robert said, really subtly and sneakily. But for most of us, I think oftentimes we don't even clock it when we're doing it. We don't even realize that it's control at first until we step back, look at our patterns, and do a lot of self-confronting. So let's walk through some of the obvious and less obvious ways that control shows up in our relationship. And then as we do that, perhaps you can listen to the rest of this episode while asking yourself, how might I actually be doing this strategy, rather than, nah, I don't do this strategy.
One obvious way that we employ this strategy is through criticisms, insults, character attacks, or really anything that diminishes the character of the person rather than addressing the behavior. And I'm going to say that again, anything that diminishes the character of the person rather than clearly addressing their behavior.
Yeah.
And this, of course, overlaps with this unbridled expression that we talked about last week. Dr. John Gottman flags criticism as one of the 4 horsemen that predict divorce like 98% of the time.
Yeah.
So what does that sound like when we're going to do some of these behaviors?
Well,
especially the you statements or the you always statements, right?
You always load the dishwasher wrong. Why can't you get it right for once?
Oh, I love these you statements. You are so lazy and you never lift a finger around here.
Oh, you are so financially irresponsible and selfish and immature.
Right. You are such a prude. No wonder our sex life is dead.
Do I have to parent you too? Why don't you grow up?
So these phrases that start with you always or you never, and I would even just say the deflection to you
Hmm.
instead of I feel, right? Whenever it's about you, you're attacking their character, you're diminishing them. And that's another subtle way that we try to control.
One of the things we talk about, and it actually comes from one of the NLP belief systems that we have, is that people are not their behaviors.
Yeah.
Separate the behavior from the person. Work on the behavior, but respect the person. With all of these phrases, we're defining the person as their character rather than being able to separate them from their behavior.
And if you think about that being on the other end of that, now I feel personally attacked.
Of course.
You're attempting to control me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, she thinks I'm worthless. Now I don't even want to be around you. So instead of, trying to get certainty, you just get more uncertainty, more uncertainty.
Or another way to say it, instead of getting your needs met, you have somebody who now doesn't want to help you to get your needs met at all.
Oh, yeah. Oh boy, you're not getting your needs met at all. You'd be sleeping on the couch.
Right.
Yeah. So other than this criticism and direct character attacks, another way that we might try to control our partner is through blame shifting.
Mm.
This is when we refuse to look at our impact, our part of the problem, and how our actions affect others. This goes back to what we said earlier about how control is often a way to soothe our own anxieties and insecurities. And since taking responsibility can be pretty uncomfortable for most people, it's not surprising that automatically we just try to shift the blame to someone else. And this started when you were 5 and and you knocked over something in the kitchen and your
Bobby
mom's
did
like,
it. I didn't do it.
yeah, I didn't do it. The ghost did it. It's just this natural reaction. A common example might be, yes, I know I said mean things to you, but you made me so angry. And if you had just apologized for behavior, then it wouldn't have escalated and I wouldn't have said those mean and nasty things to you. It's all about you.
So instead of owning my part of it, it's like, yeah, but you made me. And if you hadn't done what you did, then I wouldn't have done what I did. So it's all your fault.
Yeah,
Blame shifting.
Robert's going to insert a swear word here, and it's just one of my favorite phrases. Like, own your shit.
Yeah.
I'm just serious. Like, I think if you just own your part, like, life gets a whole lot better.
Yeah.
If you can see it and own it.
So another way we try to control people is through triangulation. And we did a full episode just on this topic of triangulation. It's been one of our top episodes actually ever. But triangulation is a way we do try to control our partner. And usually this involves playing the victim. And of course, every victim needs what? A villain.
Yeah.
A villain. So as a way to try to regain a sense of control, we might go out and find a third party to prop up our side of it. So we find a third party to tell our villain story to about our partner, or find somebody to seek agreement with us or to seek validation from while building a case against the villain who is our partner.
I think every time I hear a villain story from anyone, I often just remember one of Sharla's favorite quotes, which is, it's an awfully thin pancake that doesn't have two sides. So I always remain curious because there's always another side.
Yeah. So triangulation is a way to get someone on your side and against the other person.
Two against one.
2 against 1.
Yep.
It's control through alliance building. And, oftentimes we are frustrated in our relationship. We're in the crunch. We're having that disillusionment and we really think there's something wrong with our partner. And so we go seeking that third party because we're frustrated. So, I understand why we do it, but it is toxic. And when you start to look for it, you will see triangulation all over the place. You may triangulate by going to your girlfriends or by going to your guy friends or by going to your mother-in-law or mother or family members or sister, or even, and this one's really tough on the kids, going to your own children to create a villain of their mother or their father.
Oh yeah, that's super common in relationships that are deteriorating rapidly.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Well, another way, guilt tripping.
Guilt tripping.
Yeah, guilt tripping's another way in which we can try to control our spouse. This is trying to make someone feel bad enough so that they will see things, and I like to say, eventually do things your way and change to come around to your point of view.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
what does
an
that sound
example,
like?
right? if you just be more affectionate, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere. That whole phrase just frightens me.
Right. But it's putting the guilt onto you,
Yeah,
you know,
it's your fault
in
that
effort to
I'm
control
looking at
you.
looking at someone else.
Or you're scrolling on your phone on Instagram,
Yeah,
looking at other women or whatever. Like,
yeah,
well, maybe if you were a little bit less of a prude, maybe I wouldn't be looking.
yeah. And it falls into the same, victim card again, right? Like you're going out again, leaving me home all by myself again.
Uh,
Or fine, I will just handle all the cleaning by myself, like usual.
mhm.
Or, if you hadn't spent all that money, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Yep, guilt tripping.
Yep, guilt
Control
tripping.
through guilt tripping. So another one, and this one can be pretty abusive, is called gaslighting. You've probably
Oh,
heard
yeah.
of gaslighting. It's a very manipulative, but it's often sneaky and covert way of controlling your partner, to control another person, where you are distorting reality. And it's intentional. It's intentional distortion of reality, where you're purposely trying to make the other person doubt themselves, to doubt their perceptions, to doubt their own mind. And this is usually done by maybe just outright denying facts, not a misunderstanding, but outright denying something that actually happened, or altering events, again, not mistaking events, but purposely altering events, or questioning the other person's memory. And these are ways to, of course, like Robert keeps referring to, deflect the responsibility, but also it's causing the other person to doubt their sanity, to question themselves, to question their own mind, and ultimately feel guilty so that they can be easier to control. So
Yep.
you've probably seen gaslighting, I'm sure, all over the
Yep.
place. It would just be like, that never happened.
Ooh.
That never happened. What are you talking about?
Am I
That,
going crazy? I thought it happened. What's
mhm.
happening here?
Or you're just overreacting. I'm the one who's always trying here, but you're always the one that's overreacting, or,
I love that phrase.
or,
You're always the one overreacting. Okay.
okay. Or, I don't know how you could ever question me or say such things about me. None of that is true. I have never done anything like that. I've never done anything to be a bad wife.
I've always been perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So gaslighting,
Yeah.
gaslighting.
Another method of control is emotional manipulation. And this one is a little bit sneakier, a little more covert, but it's also a control tactic. It's common in households for one person to control the entire atmosphere of the home with their emotions, whether that's through sadness or sulking or depression or even anger. And then everyone else in the house must just either hide or conform to manage this person's intense emotions. The reason why this is considered as a control aspect is because it's a way to use emotions to get other people to do what you want. And if you've lived in one of those households and you look back, you realize that it really was. When I lived in one of those households, my mom would come home and boy, it was take the temperature, whether you want to run and hide or have a conversation. And it was really just emotional manipulation.
Mm.
Yeah.
So many of the behaviors that we discussed so far today can become abusive. It doesn't mean that using these behaviors automatically makes you abusive, because most of us have done one or more
Yep.
of these
I did. Yep.
patterns at some point, and we might still do them occasionally today, but they can cross a line into emotional abuse, because when we try to gain control over another human being by making them feel intimidated or inferior or guilty or crazy, what we're doing is we're trying to steal their autonomy from them and to steal their choice away from them by controlling them.
Yeah.
And that is where we can cross a line into an area that we don't want to go to in our relationship.
Absolutely. There's so many more examples of control that we could discuss, but let's focus on one last example, and perhaps the most subtle of all, which is trying to control how other people perceive you.
Mm,
Now, we say that we don't do that, but isn't it interesting how often we believe that we can control what other people think about us?
mm,
And we've all tried to shape other people's perceptions at some point, whether it's through avoiding topics, maybe bending the truth, usually to make ourselves look better, or through over explaining our position, also to make ourselves look better. And I would say that if we think that we don't do this, then I would ask you to take a look at your social media. If you're only posting the photos that are perfect and cleaned up with the right filter, then we're doing exactly the same thing. We're really just trying to We're concerned about how people perceive us. And that's not necessarily bad, but again, if it gets excessive, then we're really trying to control the people in the room or the people around us.
And we're not knowable. If we're doing that with our partner, we're not knowable, which means we can't be in connection and in intimacy, because intimacy is allowing ourselves to be known and being tolerant enough to be able to know the other person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in whatever form control manifests, here is the biggest takeaway for today. Control isn't real. It is an illusion. You might get your way temporarily. You might be able to manipulate someone like your spouse into doing what you want in the moment, whether that's having sex with you or buying you something or getting Robert to go out and mow the lawn or getting me to do the dishes. But whatever it is, if you are using control tactics, it will always come at a heavy, heavy cost. There's a cost for forcibly getting your way because, like I said earlier, we all have that fundamental need, it's a human need for autonomy and free will. And when we are violating that in another person, it is going to do damage. It's going to damage your friendship. It's going to undermine your intimacy. And most of all, it's going to erode trust, which is very hard to get back.
Yeah, I love that. It does erode trust
So,
because you feel used.
yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually your partner is going to rebel in some way or resent you in some way. And that is it's just way too costly.
It's probably pretty easy to hear these destructive patterns and think, well, that's not me. I don't do that. I've never even done that. You might even find yourself thinking of someone else who fits these patterns more than you do. But I want you to pause and resist that urge. Instead of pointing the finger outward at someone else, I want you to turn that sort of inward and ask yourself, how might I be doing some of these behaviors? Because the truth is, we all engage in these behaviors to some extent. We just tend to notice them more in others. And the reason we tend to notice them more in others is because oftentimes we're acutely aware when we're being controlled.
So this whole series is about losing strategies. One of the most, I would say, winning strategies for couples is self-confronting. Self-confronting is such a powerful relationship healer when we start to see ourselves more clearly and when couples start to tell a more honest story about what is going on, namely that with themselves.
Yeah.
That is when relationships start to shift. And the thing Robert and I come back to all the time is that relationships are our greatest teachers. They are people growing machines. They point out our immaturities. They point out these destructive behaviors that we do, and they grow us up, especially in the context of our closest relationships. It may not feel that way in the moment, especially when you're going through tough times in your relationship, but these challenges that you face are exactly what helps you to grow and to learn. I don't know where this came from. I think it was David Schnarr. She said, there's nothing wrong with your marriage. Your marriage is doing exactly what it's meant to do. It's meant to grow you up. It's when we get into stage 2, into the crunch, when things are difficult and these patterns start to emerge, that's when we have the opportunity to really recognize in ourselves these limitations so that we can see where we need to improve. And we need each other for that. We need each other in order to become a better version of ourselves.
All right. Time for homework. Let's talk about some journal prompts for this week.
Okay. So journal question number 1, when have you noticed the crunch in your relationship? So as we talked about at the beginning, it's that stage where you realize there's that discrepancy between what you want in the relationship and what you're getting, that frustration when things aren't working out the way that you want them to.
All right. Journal question number 2. How do you reach for control in those moments? Which tactics that we talked about today show up, and how might this be hurting your partner and your relationship?
Okay. Question number 3. What would your wisest, most loving self do differently next time rather than reaching for control or one of these other losing strategies?
Good question. Number 4, consider sharing one insight about your own behavior, something you've noticed in yourself, not your partner's behavior, and share that with your partner.
That, I think, is a wrap for today.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, well, thanks so much for being here today. So be sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss next week's losing strategy. We're going to do number 3. And thank you so much for spending time with us today. We're so grateful. If this episode resonated, please consider leaving us a 5-star review and a comment and share it with someone who you might know that might need to hear this episode.
Yeah. And as always, be kind to each other this week. Put each other first. It's the small things done often that create the biggest impact.
Until next time.